The story begins with getting acquainted with a girl. What is the name of Sui Xianggi? She was the owner of the unique ability to punish the blessers of minor women's characters and various kinds of scum that insult girls. But one day she met the owner of the male system, and there was even the possibility that such two opposite people with their principles and visions will become lovers or love each other. Both realized that such relationships could jeopardize their lives, as they would violate their main life and the excitement among the relatives and closest of these two. But the story has already begun. The cafe has two young people, a boy and a girl. They said that the young man had certain criteria for his partner. He made his demands on a girl who could become his baby's mother. Lady Shen liked the boy, and he told her that she was of her age, a girl could become his partner in family life. For her, he is even ready to weaken certain requirements and criteria for the candidate. The girl was awkward from such a conversation. She reported Mr. Chan that they cannot talk about such serious things now when they know each other very little. She considers such a conversation inappropriate. But her words were misunderstood. He reported that they could not talk about marrying until the girl gave birth to 3 healthy and strong children. Then you can return to this topic. The young man told his vision about marriage. He emphasized that the stamp in the passport meant nothing equal, and happiness in the family can be gained only through love and children. Otherwise, they have no future. But suddenly, such a serious and balanced guy said that when the children are more, he would be forced to stay with this woman. However, he will have mistresses, and he will just visit the children. The girl asked if her interlocutor jokes now. The same began to talk about how the future wife had to wait for him, and she should treat him with respect and immense respect. Miss Shen was wondering why the young man believes that she would depend on him constantly. Although she was a native of a poor family, now her work is going well. She has been educated and has stable earnings. But Chen believed that a lonely woman did not really live, but simply performs it. After all, she cannot live without a man. Yomi should be grateful for his choice and the decision to be together, under his wing. The young man thought in full seriousness that she had no more chance of a happy life. After all, at her age, they will soon stop paying attention. He also added that the life of such a girl will be considered spoiled. This attitude was very angry with the girl. She did not restrain himself and turned the dessert on her head, saying that she did it on behalf of all women who were humiliated by men. The man was left alone. Now he tried to understand what he did wrong and why the wonderful times when the woman had duties and she had to have the necessary virtues. Suddenly, it seemed to be disassembled on molecules. An unknown voice from above reported that the required user was found. The stranger also asked if he wanted to come true for his dream. His personal network advisor spoke with the young man. He called Chen's number and reported that the emperor's regime could now be activated. From now on, he will help to fulfill his dreams. The year has passed from the events described. Chen got what he dreamed of for so long. Every day he had a new beauty, and to meet the girl for him was nothing difficult. It seemed perfect. But the most important was that he was able to gain in his own hands an endless power, becoming an emperor. His ambitions and strong male sides, thanks to the systemic administrator, developed as much as possible. Finally, it came when, thanks to his power, he was able to satisfy his aspirations and help people live a life worthy of a person. Chen never forgot his merit, but always emphasized his self. Love also pleased the fact that the beauties who would not even look at him before, or who did not behave well with other men, treated him very gently and tried to satisfy him. Chen tamed them and created for himself a personal male paradise where women and girls were like a sheep. His dreams came true, and he just had to enjoy his life. A woman in rich clothing listened to a report of her servant who was sitting on her knees. The girl reported that the body, as always, was hidden in the backyard of the house. It was a daily practice. The beauty in rich clothing assured that it would happen to every girl with a harem who will dare to challenge her, or try to get more attention and glory. She was called Sin Sinlin, a concubine of the emperor. Another woman with white hair in the presence of servants took a bath filled with blood of young girls. Blondivka believed that the blood of young virgins would help her keep her beauty and youth for years to come. She was called John and she was another imperative of the emperor. This woman also could not put up with the fact that someone tried to take over her glory and influence on his highness of the ruler. The woman looked carefully at the huge tower that prevailed over everything around. The stranger thought that more than 200,000 workers had put their lives over this building for the sake of the beloved emperor. The woman was named Nin Zhen, and she was a Nin's concubine. And it was this girl who was the one whose capricious will wanted to satisfy a powerful lover, and on whose disposal people worked on a tower that reached the stars. Mountains of corpses in the midst of the sea of blood turned to the supreme deity, trying to ask him the help and punishment for the one who condemned them for such existence, and who took away the earthly life in them, forever deprived peace of mind. The girl was lying on the beach. She hid from the burning sun under an umbrella. Suddenly she was notified from the system administrator. The system reported the coordinates and the time where the mission will take place. It seemed that a business trip would take place in the world as similar as possible to ancient China, where a man who was helped by the system at the expense of the emperor's regime came to power. He became a local dictator. The main purpose of this business trip was the revenge for the imperative imperatives, who were mocked by the local population and tried in every possible way to seize the supreme power at the expense of enslavement of ministers. The system asked whether the girl consent to accomplish this task. The Sului agent knew that the fault of all the events on the lands of that kingdom was the male system that gave the infinite possibilities of fools. Often the developers of the system acted very roughly in arrogance, causing various side effects that can only be compared to the butterfly effect. Their actions are aimed only at maximum satisfaction of the customer's needs. Sui Lui thought that this time the system had caused too much trouble if so many people were injured, and they all asked for revenge after their death and death. The girl realized that while the acting emperor and his wife were alive, the flow of deaths would not stop in any circumstances. He will try to control everything and satisfy his desires and hidden perversions. The agent agreed, but the system reported another, the most important information. The data stated that the emperor possessed the extraordinary ability of the golden body and was not vulnerable to cold weapons. But it was not frightened. She also won opponents with abilities that prevailed by human ordinary abilities. And even more, she hated men who considered women for nothing and humiliated them. Before entering the world, the SU decided to find some artifact which would help her in a future mission. The assistant did not find anything suitable, but the agent replied that not an important item, but a user. The girl chose a map of moving the soul, which allowed to be embodied in the body of a resident of the world for a whole month. The owner's soul disappears completely. The whole card can be used 3 times a period. At this preparatory stage for the trip was completed. SU did not think that something heavy or impossible ahead, but she also did not go to relax. The emperor and his knots will be punished. The head of the village stood in front of the official from the imperial court and pleaded not to pick up a bag with seeds and grain, which was harvested next year for sowing. Without this, the villagers will simply die of hunger. The official brought his foot to the blow and said that the emperor had sent him on a journey to the lands for him to find beauties for his yard. If there is no such in the village, then people have to pay tax. The headman worshipped very low and fell to the ground. He asked to forgive him for being not as beautiful as in other areas, but they also did not pay tax and resources for existence. The SU agent looked at this scene. She saw the head of the official and 2 armed soldiers behind a civil servant. The girl, even through the voice of the employee, heard the tone of the emperor's abuse. A small squirrel sat on the shoulders, more like a toy. The girl asked him how he felt. The assistant was called a trick, and he understood the language of his mistress. He felt not very. Due to the movement, the animal has lost too much energy, and it needs to fall into hibernation for some time and restore resources. He also asked the mistress to move somewhere, because the barrier would disappear with his sleep. The assistant gave certain abilities to his owner. After the owner has used the charge of his animal, the abilities decreased. Now the little one gave the girl a shield of invisibility and hid it. She gently put him in her arms and began to sway. She asked him to relax, and she would behave well and carefully. So far, the agent decided to collect as much information. The assistant wanted to wish her good luck and ask her to act carefully, but the dream made him finally. SU said that next time she would be a servant in the palace of the emperor. Now the girl is alone. The agent now decided to help the head of the village and at the same time to approach the yard of the ruler. She came out of the bushes and tried to draw attention to her person. The official was surprised when he saw her. The employee turned to a poor man who did not understand where the girl came from, why he did not tell about her. Even at the court of the ruler, you do not often meet someone who looks like her. The old man did not know where this girl came from and who she was, but he guessed that its appearance would solve the problem of tax, and save the lives of his countrymen and villagers from starvation. The official, meanwhile, ordered the O employee to take a stranger and lead it to their transport. He was glad that the issue was resolved in a similar way. He did not want to kill the whole village at all. Su was happy about how easily she managed to embody the plan of penetration into the palace of the emperor. Rather, she began to embody his first phase. Men did not guess anything, but she was not asked her unnecessary questions. After the agent got to the palace of flowering peaches, she became one of the 3 servants of Emperor In. This woman was very jealous, but many competitors died from her hands. The servant combed the inn and asked if the emperor would come today. The girl reported that today he was noticed while visiting the Palace of the Moonlight. It was very angry. She rapidly pulled the scissors and hit the girl in her neck. Everything around was in the blood of a servant. He accused the poor deceased that she specially made that ugly hairstyle. It stood over the body of a servant. Blood also got on her dress, but the woman felt nothing. It was unfortunate for her to be ordinary. Everyone is used to her spontaneous anger for no reason. The girls quickly kneel before her. They did not even lift their eyes. Fear cried out some of them, but Sue was simply regarded as an extra fact of the future victim that accurately deserved the punishment. The agent turned to the woman. She said she guessed the real causes of the mistress, but she also knows the way you can steal the love of the ruler from the Palace of the Moonlight. She did it in order for the concubine to get to the emperor, and with her to the palace would also penetrate Su. The woman was interested in the proposal. There is no trace left of her anger, only blood on the face. He said that when a girl would help her return the love of the ruler, she would generously reward her for their efforts. But when he does not handle it, he will suffer from her hands and ask for death as a deprivation. Su confidently said she would help. The feudal system, in her opinion, could drive anyone out of mind. The life of a person was not valued here at all, except for she occupied some post or worked on the system. The emperor, meanwhile, traveled with his possessions on a harnessed goat crew. He was clearly boring. The man thought that none of his numerous concubines could have a son. He decided that this problem could be solved by finding new beauties to his palace. Suddenly, his crew began to worry. It made it break away from the thought of mistresses, to return to reality. Seuss learned from the servants that the lord likes to ride a carriage harnessed by huge rams or goats. The same to bring him to the Palace of Peaches, the girl scattered in the path of salt that animals so much love. And after some time, the harness of His Highness of the ruler had already returned to the Palace of Flowering Peaches. But just deliver His Highness here was not the top of her plan. He had to leave. In the garden, the emperor was waiting for. She kept a kettle in her hands, and there were cups nearby. There was a very beautiful dress on the concubine. The woman clearly expected him and immediately offered to drink. The Su dressed and helped to do the hairstyle of the owners. The girl talked about how to treat her husband properly. From the very beginning, it is necessary to take care of his attention and attract him. But together with jewelry and sexual clothing, the main argument in order to conquer the heart of a man, there is respect and praise of his qualities, but it should not grow into open hypocrisy. The emperor and concubine sat at the table. The woman reminded that they would gossip about the great endurance of the ruler. It also concerned drinking, and to all this, the woman had to give happiness to her husband. The Su also told that it was sometimes worth making a glass and drinking the interlocutor from the dishes. I took advantage of this reception and reported that the wine in the emperor's bowl delicious than her. The girl reminded that it was not necessary to immediately go to the excited emperor. You need to play with him a little so that he wants even more. The one used this advice directly at the table, but the main trump was a surprise. For the emperor this time she became the dance of his concubine. The woman circled in a seductive tank, drawing the owner's attention to her body, starting him. He did not expect it clearly, but now he could not even take his eyes away from his concubine. And she circled around His Highness, but did not approach. Her task was to provoke the ruler. When the woman finally sat on the floor, she called him. The dress slid quietly from the yin, and she had a very attractive look, which is difficult to hold on to her husband. The emperor wanted it very much. He believed that the girl tried for him, so she should thank her very well today. But even now, his attitude was more custom about a girl and a concubine. For him, she remained a toy. The girl rejoiced that she so skillfully used the concubine. The emperor was not very different in mind, so easily brought to the attractive spells of the woman who wanted to stay. Sue was walking the garden and suddenly came across the emperor and a concubine right in the middle of the bushes. She realized that for such a man, norms of morality and rules did not exist. He took everything he wanted and did not stop. For some reason, it seemed to the agent that the main character of this story was not the one who really needed it. She was not mistaken. The system administrator carefully monitored monitors on the unfolding events. The morning came the next day, and the ruler was going to return to his palace. Sue brought him clothes, saying that her mistress had commanded. He replied that she could help him dress. The agent wore the emperor, and more convinced that she was not mistaken in her calculations. Someone used the will of this man, giving him such powers and depriving him of responsibility. The emperor was just a nearby baby, and the male system could not belong to him personally. Unknown persons were behind his person. Someone embodied their ambitions, using the main character as if a puppet. The ruler took the hand of Su. He asked if she was a new service. Her data indicated that she was not noble or aristocratic origin, but she was young and beautiful, so he would make her her own. The agent smiled slyly and looked at her husband. She said she was not worthy of such praise, and even more unworthy to divide the bed with the powerful emperor of the whole state, before which the SC was bowed. The girl thought about whether it would be possible to use a map of moving souls. It's time to try. Su approached the man as much as possible. He thought that the concubine changed his mind and was already preparing. The agent held the card behind his back. After she activated her spell, the mana wrapped the couple. The emperor did not understand what was happening. He still hoped to enjoy the body of this young maid. But the idea was not possible. There was a special field around the emperor that protected his character. Probably the one who received the protection of the system was not controlled by the spells and the magic of others. The girl replied that she is a simple servant, so when the owner separates her bed with her, it can very much angry her mistress, and then her life will hang on the hair. Su actually considered what to do next. But the man suddenly grabbed her hand and said that the mistress would even be grateful for honor when the emperor will use her maid. After all, a large man should have many women and a big harem. Sue was rescued by her mistress. The woman visited the room to invite the ruler for breakfast. She seemed to have guessed something, but she was afraid to admit it. The agent bowed to her respectfully. The emperor embraced a concubine who told how he personally ordered the servants of the kitchen to prepare everything that her beloved lord loved so much. Yesterday he spent a lot of strength. The same should be renewed. He led her to the garden and said that it was not all that he was capable of. The woman smiled and laughed. Sue hoped that the concubine did not notice anything, and her life was not threatened in the near future. Late night, the lady called to herself. The girl could only guess the reasons. It was pointless to kill her now, because her advice has not yet been brought to the desired end. The same will not get rid of her now. The woman asked if the girl knew the reason why the roses are so good in this garden. Then she added that the cause is a large number of corpses underground. There were all her opponents. And emphasized that all of them, regardless of origin and status, became a fertilizer in her garden. The woman said she liked the SU and she wants them to take care of His Majesty of the Emperor. The girl thought that the mistress was a little completely mind, but she explained that her maid should take away the place of red-haired Yan-er. Then the owner will be completely under the influence of the palace of a flowering peach. After all, for this design, the woman ordered the morning to serve the emperor. The beauty of the girl forced many to go crazy. The same is worth using this resource for the future. At the last moment, the agent managed to evade a stroke with a sharp blade. The attacker only touched her hair on the head of the maid. She guessed that she was in fact intending to kill and get rid of dangerous competition. She held the blade and wondered why the girl continues this game. It was in her interest to surrender and give her skin out of her face. The terrible guess illuminated the mind of Sue, but it was just stupid. The mistress tried to get her face off and use it. Her body and face of the maid would be very attractive to His Majesty, who she clearly liked, and which he tried to bow in the morning before breakfast. So now the concubine ordered not to move and be grateful for not killing the rival, but gives a chance to stay alive. Just get rid of your sweet, beautiful beauty. The agent used the map to relocate the soul for the second time. However, it should be begged that the soul of the person and the body of the owner may not fit each other. In this case, they will not be able to use long. But now it is necessary to have time for the allotted time to pack the opponents and bring a disorder to the life of the emperor himself and his approximates. The only thing that could give up is the color of the eyes that goes with the soul. A crowd of peasants gathered around a cart, harnessed by a horse. It brought grain for people. The man could not believe that he had to be grateful for this grain. Previously, this was not observed. The official with the warriors who recently were going to pick up the ladder from people now said that every peasant would receive a large portion of rice, and who will praise very well, he will receive an allowance. The people began to speak good words about each other about the mistress and to praise its beauty and personal qualities. Everyone wanted to get an additional portion of rice. As a result, the concubine fed people. Sue and the body of the concubine lay on the couch, and next to it was her servant. But she talked about a people who praised and almost a godmother. However, thanks to people compared to the grace of the ruler. The girl also added that the emperor has often gone to Nin's concubine recently, and she could beat the mistress. The SU decided to make a servant, but she asked for her not too smart words. She had not killed anyone for several days, so they began to say that the emperor's commitment had changed her character. People thought that the concubine would finally become better and softer to servants. The assistant asked why the SO is in the body of the concubine for so long. Is this happened because the ruler began to visit her palace more often? The girl had never jumped so much. Instead, she said that she had not yet got to the main administrator who actually manages everyone here, and even if she met him, she would not be ready to fight him without knowing anything about him. For some time she will have to live the way her mistress lived so as not to draw attention to herself. Honglin was often unpredictable, but could throw a grasshopper that none of her approached to her. But Sue really tried to find her opponents to know her act. They will try to get her in a generosity because the emperor will definitely praise her and give her new generosity and caresses. And even when the user administrator learns or suspects something, he will not be able to react so quickly and correct mistakes. The assistant praised the mistress for a clear, pure mind and motivation. The girl took an animal in her hands and said that she was in fact feeling bad without him, and without his advice or hint, it acts much slower. He should recover and return faster. But the trick fell asleep again. The agent thought about how small he is, but how much the noise raises around him. The girl realized that Cory opponents would receive a strange news about her assistance to the peasants. The white-haired beauty sat on the throne. The servant wore something on her leg and told that the concubine showed unprecedented generosity to her peasants, and they consider it the first beauty of the empire. The servant also told that the glory of her opponent also went to other provinces and spread the lands of the empire. But her lady does not need to pay attention to this, because His Highness considers her the best. The woman grabbed the girl by her face and said that she is to spit who thinks about her. She should be the most beautiful girl on all the lands of His Highness, so now she will also do a good deed. The concubine ordered to open all the grain storage and distribute the stocks to the poor and the needy. In this way, she tried to surpass the rival in a generosity to the subjects so that Emperor Chen did not forget about her. The user of the system, which after some time looked at the cases in the empire, was Jiang Mo. His assistant reported that something strange is happening in the provinces, which was not previously observed on monitors. Jiang sat to see the materials that were gathered. For some reason, it is difficult for him to work lately. Fortunately, less than 7% remained before the mission. But suddenly he noticed that the speed of passage was falling. The administrator realized that some element of the system does not work and interferes with normal functioning. More efforts need to be made to make it time to solve and repair everything in a timely manner. The servant slept with His Highness. Suddenly he rose and grabbed his head. The man ordered the servants to get away from his room and close all the doors so that no one came to him. He was summoned by Jiang Mo, whom the emperor called a mentor, and he in turn called him his wise child. The mentor asked if the emperor's state affairs were interested. He replied that everything is fine in his possession. There were no problems. The population is calm, taxes pay, the treasury is not empty. But Jiang reminded that the treasury decreased by half the amount in a month. The man advised to be calm, because his concubines just indulge. In general, everything is functioning and properly functioning. His thoughts actually wandered away from this place in search of a new girl. The administrator replied that he needed another thing from his student. He needed a card to take possession of a character for a short time to find out everything for himself and correct. The period lasts 3 months. It is because of this that people and others will see you whose character will use. This is usually avoided and done without extreme measures. The administrator took the forms of some important artifact, such as the sword or the spirit of the artifact, You can become someone very similar to a wise elder and watch and help with the shadows. This time, Jan decided to act dramatically, but he had to sneeze. Even if everything is not very smooth, his life will not suffer from it. There were a lot of those who wanted to use his services. The administrator reported that he made many mistakes. The same MO should intervene. His laziness could cost him a ward if another mission under his leadership fails. Zhang was reading the latest reports on what was happening in this world. Chen so allowed himself to mock girls and women that it was strange as he was not killed, and John had to remedy the situation. The emperor, in a new semblance that not everyone could see, she met with his servants. The woman immediately saw that something had changed. The emperor himself changed greatly. This could not hide camouflage, but she thought it was worth continuing to play a role. She guessed that the administrator stole the character and is now trying to use him to obtain information about this world. Meanwhile, Jiang asked who the local people call the gift of the sky, and who is very generously disposed of resources that rightfully belong to the state and go to the treasury. He had to admit it. Jiang, with a rapid movement, approached the girl and hugged her for 2 spicy places. He asked the girl openly if she was actually an agent. Su did not seem. She replied that the concubine did not understand the question. Lucky at the emperor, she asked if she wanted to continue the conversation in a cozy bed. In fact, the agent did not expect that she would get an administrator's suspicion so quickly. Jiang Mei said she may not pretend. He analyzed the percentage of the mission, and he stopped from the moment when the behavior of Inns has changed dramatically. By the end, he was not sure. The administrator said that she skillfully imitated the behavior of the concubine, but in something she pierced. And this element became the color of the girl's eyes. He changed. The administrator immediately paid attention. The young man continued to say that he loved the emperor very much, so he was capable of much for him. And the girl could not even hide her disdain for him and his stay in the palace. The SU realized that she had been exposed. She thought that now everyone needs to doubt the person of the ruler himself. Then she will have a chance to escape from the house and escape. You can use the map. The young man stopped her. He said she's too smart for her time, and Jan was not going to let her go. Too many problems, the girl caused the mission to be managed by the boy. The administrator was angry. Jia Mott struck the concubine with scissors in the neck. He sat down the circle of her body and thought he did the right thing. After all, in the worlds of men there was too much strange. He sometimes thought that they were prescribed by a pervert. In general, he really liked the girl. If they met in other worlds, other conditions, he did not mind having fun. But now she crossed his way and threatened the disruption of the mission. He did not feel guilty for murder. After that, the agent's soul returned to the main real dimension. Or will it be placed in a temporary, short-lived repository for the victim's soul? SU was in a temporary body. It became invisible to users. The girl took this opportunity. She had the choice to use the soul-moving map to obtain a new medium. The agent thanked the artifact because he allowed not to enter the system again. The leadership could track it. But now she was also worried about Jia Mo, who ruled the body of the emperor. The girl expected a new meeting with him. For this moment, she's never met such character. And now it's time to find a new carrier for her soul in this dimension, where the girls were not in the favorite. In the hall, it was met by a white-haired beauty. It looked like she was playing with a kind of amazing but not good in content game. In fact, the servant was to use the ritual today as a victim. The SU decided to save the girl. She grabbed the blonde woman. The concubine could not see the agent, so was surprised because it was happening now. She is surprised to consider himself the owner of life. SU took the girl for her hair and said that it was probably time to feel what the victims of the concubine were felt. But nothing is better than the girls of others only because it sleeps with the emperor and gives us to use. The agent moved into the body of a young lady. She immediately ordered the cities to bring her tea. It was necessary to observe the line of behavior of the former mistress of the body, so that once again, the administrator is not attention. In the morning, the concubine spoke with an assistant. After spending some time in the girl's body, she realized she was pregnant. The trick could not believe that while he was asleep, so many strange things had happened and changed. Fortunately, it turned out that the girl was wrong. She was not pregnant. But her assistant asked what they would do in this case. After all, there was no special artifact that could help deceive. The girl reassured him. The SU considered herself a good actress and hoped that she would play the role of a pregnant woman well. In his past life, Yan-er was a Persian priestess of one of the cults in her native lands. Various potions and decoctions, medicinal herbs were popular at home. It also has a wide range of tools for this purpose. Some kind of suitable drug is found exactly. It remains to find a recipe for potion that will help you staging pregnancy symptoms. After that, no one will be able to doubt the pregnancy of the concubine, and only one man who had access to her could be a father. The assistant asked what they would do with the administrator in the body of the emperor. The SU responded that he would definitely have no free time. Now his problem was the ordering of all the disorder in the state. It even came to the fact that some of the provinces raised their weapons against the rightful ruler, and he led the army to suppress the riots. The soldiers did not expect this. The army has not been going to hold such actions for a long time. Yan-er said that the assistant should play one of the key roles in her plan for his later life. He replied that full strength and energy and ready to help the owners. But before that, he asked about payment. The emperor was occupied by the rebellion that was raised by his relatives killed by him. For this purpose, he gathered all the troops in the rebellious province and spent the last months there, in order. GMO himself thought that the murder of a girl was impulsive, but the fact that relatives rebelled, it was the appearance of a long, planned, and prepared pre-speech against the emperor. The mission coefficient decreased much. It was also necessary to streamline the emperor's attitude towards girls and women to reduce the level of dissatisfaction with his face. The previous character almost spoiled the mission. The treasury was also very injured through the agent, but the main culprit was still Chen. Sometimes it seemed that he had a member instead of brains, and he could not use it at all. The assistant administrator informed that the character owner wanted to communicate. Jia didn't really want to do it, but he was forced. In general, the former player was very persistent and delivery. The emperor sat in the cage and appealed to the administrator. Chen said that the ruler could punish the concubine as he seems necessary. Jia was surprised that he dared to talk so with him after everything he did. Chen was not really such a fool as he could think of him. He took time in the cage specifically to be able to break out of the cage and to take possession of his body again. The administrator did not know. He emphasized that the player would have to be closed for some time until serious cases are resolved. The administrator thought about why the system did not choose anyone more reasonable. The servant was detached from thought. He worshipped and reported that the news arrived from the palace of the month. Yan Siv sent a messenger and asked to come to the palace for an important question. Zhang Mo was very angry when the concubines tried to draw his attention every day. He was tired of it, but he had to listen to the messenger. Unova reported that his Mrs. Yan-er was pregnant from the emperor. The administrator thought that his character actually had cancer of the reproductive system. That is, in order to get pregnant from it, the concubine had to either make a lot of effort or make a miracle. Chen's sperm were too weak to develop to something more. The same doubts immediately enveloped His Highness of the Emperor. He knew how to do him properly. Troops cannot be left. The young man thought about whether to spend earned points to check for the authenticity of the pregnancy. Perhaps the next betrayal and the trick to it were hidden here. I decided to check live. On the same day, he ordered his troops to gather. They have to return to the palace. In the meantime, the emperor will go to the Palace of the Moonlight to check everything in person without trusting anyone. Jiang thought that when the agent returned again, the system of spatial, the time control was precisely leaving again. It is not necessary to make the necessary adjustments and strengthen safety. The next day, the emperor arrived at the Joner Palace. He asked the girl why she had a very flat stomach when she was told that she is pregnant, and probably from him. SU did not get lost in front of the administrator. She replied that she was actually in the second month of pregnancy. It is also difficult to distinguish it from being simulated or pretending. She asked if she could have been suspected. The young man assured that she was experiencing in vain. After all, he fully trusts the testimony of the court doctor and no gram is doubted. His arrival can only be explained by the fact that he is too worried. The emperor noticed oranges on the table. He knew that Yan did not love them. The same taste of the girl has changed. She explained this by the fact that pregnancy does a lot with a woman's body, changing his preferences. In fact, she specifically put oranges in the most noticeable place for the man to see them exactly and pay attention. After all, everyone is saying that Vagtini loves sour and especially fruits. When they were both sitting on the pillows, Jiang said that it seems that his beloved concubine had recovered a little. It became more fully and round. The girl couldn't believe it. She jumped out of place and asked with a road horror whether her waist really became round and increased. But it was another check of the Emperor. The girl's reaction seemed true. The girl cleared it. She stuck to him and said that he was too treacherous, and if he again does something like that, then she will be offended and will never let him go to himself, after which he will suffer. Jan did not feel any guilt. He believed that he simply pledged the extra, but nothing would happen to it. The concubine manners were truly blossoming and anger, but it was necessary to play a role. Yaner asked if her lover stayed at night. He thought that the best option was to return to the vowel space than to sleep with a pregnant girl. He asked if he would not interfere. The girl tried to stop him. After all, she wore his baby, and her husband did not want to be with her. This was very offended by her and gave rise to doubts about this truth and honesty. She played a role. He was forced to agree to stay. However, now he did not want to do it. Just if Jiang refused, he could rise an extra noise, and that would still harm his mission. In the middle of the night, the girl woke up. The lord who slept around her also woke up. He asked what happened. She replied that she saw a very scary dream. It was full of blood, it flowed rivers, and the baby disappeared. Jan knew the previous story of Yang Er, knew about her bloody baths, so he asked to just calm down and lie down. In his opinion, karma was chasing the girl, but tonight he was not destined to sleep. The concubine continued to sit and cry. She asked what to do if it was not just a dream. The girl seemed to be a dream, and their baby was in fact someone or something threatened. The young man was a pity. He stroked her head and assured that everything would really be fine with her and the baby. The Lord promised to take care of them personally. After all, the child will be his successor or a daughter he will love. Yaner put her hand on the knee of a man. She said she had become easier than his words. However, there was something that was disturbed. The concubine reported that I would like to invite a magician to the harem, because there are many negatives. The man assured that he should not be spent in his palace. He will personally do the way inside the harem. But the voice about magic and its highness could spread the lands very quickly. He also promised that he would be constantly near and no evil would happen to his pregnant concubine. Mother and baby will always be under cover. Su thought that his constant stay near would be superfluous. Yaner thanked His Majesty for such mercy. This will actually be the foundation for the next plan. It is necessary to act gradually so as not to attract the suspicious administrator to your person. The dark-haired beauty asked the servant what happened to her coral powder reserves. The girl replied that Jan Er's concubine asked her to give her stocks because the emperor has been in her stall for the 3rd day. The woman was thinking that His Majesty never liked the concubines and girls who use cosmetics. Something suspicious was in this everything. Jan Er was a girl who dared to deceive. Nin decided to personally visit the girl. She could not allow to behave with the great successor of Nin's house. The emperor did not have to leave her alone to go. The concubine came accompanied by servants to the Palace of the Moonlight. But now there was no one here. It was not at all similar to previous times when life was fountain and was full of guests and nobility. Nin heard a strange sound and asked the service if they heard it. Those replied that it seemed like the sound of falling leaves that the wind rustled. But the woman is convinced that it was a cry of a girl or woman who suffered. One of the officials who accompanied said that they went gossip about how Jan Er killed young girls and bathed in their blood, trying to preserve their youth and beauty. The service was asked to get out of here and to visit the concubine next time. After all, ghosts or other unclean power could actually be kept here. But the mistress was angry with a similar language. She did not believe in similar. Nin Stranger said that she was constantly using her status of Persian priestess, telling her fables regarding demons and gods. A foreign savage just mocked people. But today, Nin was going to put an end to all the lies that spread about Jan Er, so today she will not retreat anywhere. The girl belonged to a very rich family and all her things were very expensive. She always wore a beautiful little bag that was used as perfume. The girl did not know that, along with the Persian incense, hallucinations and various visions could begin. Nin got to the trap that was prepared by Jan Er. The girl with the assistant went secretly. The little one asked where the girl learned about the secret moves. She replied that Jan Er had some unhealthy hobbies. The concubine was playing with them before releasing all the blood from her victim. She allowed them to hide and try to save their lives. She watched them with secret moves and played like a cat with mice. Su asked the assistant to silence. After all, there was another task now. They will learn the nun of Nin who dared to say bad things about the ruler and accuse Yang Er of deception. Meanwhile, the guests searched the house. but she could not find a source of strange noise. The cries did not joke and alert her, but she did not see or find anyone in the whole house. Nin began to reassure herself, writing off everything on fantasy, but she noticed how the curtain was whispering. When she looked at her, she noticed a mask. A helper SU lay near her, but he was invisible for her. The woman was worried. The mask, which in itself moves, alarmed it, and in the room no one would be able to hide. So perhaps gossip about unclean power was not as false as it seemed at first glance. Nin did not see behind the figure of a young girl. The face of the latter was painted, black lips and blood flowed from the eyes. The concubine was very frightened and shouted loudly, calling for the help of the service. The concubine fell on the floor. Sue and her assistant decided that they finally achieved what they wanted. The girl asked the animal next time not to smear the mirror with nasty and turbulent. The little one said that a great influence was used by a girl's makeup, which was so accurately like a ghost. She answered that she had to be a ghost in one of the worlds, and therefore she had the necessary experience. The emperor asked Jan Er about what was so frightened by Nina's concubine in the Palace of the Moonlight. And now everyone around the gossip is that unclean power is in the palace. Servants are asked to call the magician. Jan Er pretended not to understand anything. She just ordered the servants to relax. No one hoped that Nin's sister would meet the ghost in her home. But she was most amazed that only Nin saw the ghost. Her servants could not fall behind her so much that he did not notice anything. The emperor, who was poured by his concubine tea, believed in the same way. He thought about what he miscalculated about the agent. There were doubts about which of the concubines could be the agent. It was Nin Zhen. After all, only the person who knew this world could believe in such gossip, who walked around the Palace of the Moon. The SU understood what doubts were breaking the man now. She also knew that he decided who was worthy of his suspicion as an agent of a competing system. The same should be taken away from yourself. Jan Er replied that she has been tormented by nightmares and scary dreams in relation to her and her child. In addition, all in her palace were panicked because of the events with Nin and her servants. The ghosts became a reality. Some insisted on calling the sorcerer. He could refuse one concubine, but he will definitely not be able to give her girlfriend from an influential, rich clan. The owner was tired of this situation, so he gave good. Nevertheless, he promised that he would personally resolve this issue by taking advantage of his position. The girl added she was delighted with him, but Sue thought about that, what it will become when he learns the truth. Su asked the boy if he understood everything. He replied that he needed 3 nights for that, and he almost broke his tongue. The girl replied that it is the price for the fact that he would play a major role in this plan. The boy got up, extended his hand, and called himself a large sorcerer Salvador, who practiced the fight against unclean. The young man promised to regain peace to the harem of His Majesty Emperor of the land. But Jan Er said she didn't believe him, and Jiang Mo will definitely not believe in his efforts to give himself a powerful sorcerer. But the next show should be like that. The young man fully approached her and plays a role. Ceremony day has come. The young man played the role of a sorcerer who came to save everyone around from unclean power. The audience believed him, but the emperor remained unprofitable with this scene with magic. The administrator was sitting a circle of concubine, and he thought that she was preparing. After all, they just spoke yesterday, and the sorcerer has already arrived today to perform the ritual and ceremony of clearing the evil in the stick. Jan reassured him, and said that she just wanted to fulfill the ruler's request faster. The girl poured tea to her husband. She thought about how much the boy would handle the role. The magician worshipped and said the ritual was coming to an end. After that, the great blessing of all those present should take place, after which Grace had to go down and help everyone present. The emperor asked the young man what he learned throughout the ritual. The young man replied that the concubine was pregnant and carries within himself the reincarnation of the great white dragon, the first great emperor. The administrator considered the girl and said that in this case the concubine deserves praise, but he understood that it was specially planned to increase its importance. The sorcerer told that the palace now had the essence of a dark dragon. He tried in every possible way to overcome the bright dragon and take advantage of his power. If you do not get rid of it, then it will gain strength. The Lord asked where in this case you need to look for a black dragon. The magician put his finger in his mouth and said that the gods could not answer exactly. Instead, they give a hint. But nothing said the young man. The boy jumped high above the ground. The emperor thought he began to flee. The owner personally thought of coping with the fugitive. For the administrator, this did not have something extremely difficult. The young man grabbed his hand. He asked if she hoped that their idea would still succeed. The young man ordered no longer to pretend. The small hint had to point to the emperor, and it was angry. Service and other girls in the palace said that the palace really began to be happy after the ruler arrived. It was with its adventure that various strangers and various misery began. Jiang Mo was up to date with everything that was talking behind his back. He also understood that these were the techniques of his enemies from the female system. It was they who aimed to manipulate the public consciousness of people in the palace. He could not stand and grabbed the concubine by the hand. In his opinion, she was 100%. But the administrator will not give her more crimes and all sorts of depressions at his expense. The girl kneeling in front of the owner. She asked if he really wanted to kill her and get rid of her. Yan said she made a lot of sins, but did not think that he would die at the hands of a loved one and her child's father. Su played a role. She asked if the great emperor will give birth to a great white dragon, after which she would be ready to accept death at Chen's hands. It had to work and cause a stir among servants. The girls in the palace said that the emperor wanted to kill their mistress. In doing so, it will get rid of the great white dragon. This was the case in the providence of the great witch. Everyone was convinced of it. The man began to be angry. He is tired of this circus, and he firmly grabbed the concubine. But she asked Grave if he was really ready to get rid of her. They understood each other, and there was the need to hide their persons. The couple kissed. Jiang Mo asked if he could kill such a beautiful concubine only because of that around something about her, but he hid the real motives. For a long time, he did not have to be with agents. The SU told the assistant that she was revealed by the emperor, who was an administrator. People are spreading gossip about the black dragon, but now he will not be able to do it, because he will play against herself. Instead, he is not something that she cannot threaten her. The young man, on the contrary, is forced to help her and Faith. The gifts from the child's father came very often, and it was not just a day. The assistant was difficult to believe that the ruler simply did so. He suspected that some code from the female system was really involved, which changed the character's behavior in this strange world. Su explained that when the emperor dares to kill her, or somehow threaten himself, he would substitute himself and confirm the intentions of a black dark dragon regarding the white dragon. Everyone was just talking about it. The girl was well aware that her efforts were honored, and the glory of the emperor spread all classes of society. But it is worth waiting for it to be corrected, then a decisive blow will be struck. The Sozo, meanwhile, considered a plan of further action. He understood that the baby was just a cover. Pregnancy Yan has become a very timely maneuver for its cover. It was impossible to get rid of it now. The administrator now thought that the women's system agents were very insidious. Their main skills were to hang a pawnship on ears, as well as skillfully manipulate public opinion. The assistant and the SU discussed the idea of the owner to arrange a banquet directly in the palace. Both realized that this was hidden by the trick and some trick against them. The same should beware of tricks. The petty reported the disappearance of the residual medicines that helped the girl to pretend to be a pregnant woman. Yan said she worked specifically on it. Her plan was to report the fake pregnancy. There is an appointment in the palace of the emperor. The concubine greeted him and said that she was very glad. Zhao understood that it is not necessary to resolve the issue now, thinking about the reputation. The girl says he feels bad, and she will not be able to accompany him, so he had to choose someone else from the concubines for her accompaniment. Zhang replied that no one was worthy but her. The man took the girl in her arms, but she said that she was very painful, and she would not be able to be so with him. The SU decided to stages right now that she has a baby miscarriage. Blood splashed in the air. Service and guests witnessed this. The women began to whisper that there was a miscarriage at the concubine. The white dragon will no longer be born. His Majesty was actually a dark, evil dragon. Yan got back on his feet and grabbed his stomach. She screamed loudly and tried hysterics to draw as much attention as possible. Her plan was implemented with success. Honor and reputation of Jiang Emu is in danger. The emperor tried to call the court doctor. He understood that in this way his concubine tried to hide his pregnancy. However, playing a role in public. Now his life is related to the agent. The man leaned to the girl and said that in this case, she cheated herself. After all, everyone knows that when miscarriage, the pressure of a woman changes very much. The doctor will reveal the truth all around. The girl was indignant. She stated the whole hall that she is a large Persian priestess and therefore does not require any focus. The words of the ruler are very abusive for her and do not undermine any basis. Yan Er tried to stab herself with a knife, believing that her honor was raging directly on people. But the emperor knocked out a knife out of her hands. He said he would leave her alive to the doctor's parish to establish the truth. From the girl's mouth, blood flowed. She said she had taken a deadly poison before. Only now did His Majesty understand with such a strong and treacherous enemy collided. The mission hung on the hair. Su had to kill her character. Then Jan Mo will not turn away from the fact that he is a black dragon, and on his conscience the murder of the white dragon. Finally, she said she would still see the emperor. After the death of her daughter, the Yan's family raised the uprising against the emperor. The people believed that the ruler was a dark dragon who intended to end the dragon of light, and so he killed young heir. Zhang Mo understood that the people would support the rebels this time. He also guessed that the mission's progress decreased much more. The efforts have gone in the last year after the intervention of the system agent. The administrator decided that he needed decisive action. His assistant and administrator informed that he personally did nothing. The mission could be suspended. He replied that nothing complicated. The main task is that the character of the emperor does not die. Everything else could do at his own discretion, simply taking into account the interests of the mission. The assistant replied that in this case he would handle it. Meanwhile, Chen began to bring to life his plan to escape from the cage. He also realized that he is now managed by the assistant administrator. He asked him to go to the room because he felt bad. The man fell to the floor and began to shout loudly and call for help. He said he was very painful and he could not tolerate such pain. The assistant descended into the cage, believing in the disease. Suddenly the dark tentacles entangled him. He could not escape. The trap made by Chen succeeded. He remained a little to the dreamy freedom in his world. The man was tired of being a puppet for the game. Chen understood that many should be grateful to the mentor. He was frightened by the perspective that one day they could not share something and would become fierce enemies. In this case, Chen will lose everything. The emperor began to think about how he could make his position safer. The man remembered that the mentor was constantly accompanied by a small robot that flew around him and gave advice. Chen decided that it would be nice to capture the assistant and start using it personally. It became much calmer when such things were in his personal possession. After reading his evil intentions, full of malice and rage, the system proposed a demon. This position allowed to obtain powerful power and at its own discretion to do justice and establish order. Having received such force, Chen could no longer worry about the fact that the mentor would control him and to deprive him of everything he had so much in recent years. So he immediately agreed. The contract was concluded. There was a pentagram on the breast of the man, which shone brightly, and the wings grew behind the back. Chen thought that in this way he would actually become the main character of this world and a sediment. The man understood that the demon system did not need to fulfill any missions or orders. In contrast, it should simply feed hatred and malice, which will make the strength and power of Chen grow. It was because of this and for this purpose that he looked at all the plows of the concubines through his fingers. He finally waited for his moment. The system was soon to go under control. The longer Jiang Mo is absent, the better. Meanwhile, the administrator wanted to apply for a special subject. But for this, an official marriage with the women's system agent had to be married, what Jiang Mo did not want to do for any artifacts. Gao Sen sat on the throne. The man threw letters into him. He sat still. The appearance of the emperor was a complete surprise for the man. He said he has now become a full-fledged master and no longer needs a mentor. Jiang Mo considered it carefully. He realized that the fool had concluded an agreement with a demonic force. This system was similar to the virus and was aimed at putting the chaos in order of higher-order systems. She is never interested in it. To do nice and useful things for your master. All of its users are promised to embody their most secret and darkest desires. Chen got out of the throne and activated the dark Manhwa around him. He tried to deal with the administrator who, in his opinion, did badly with him. The same time has come to pay and revenge. Jan asked what happened to his assistant who helped manage the system. The emperor replied that he became a nutritious material for the demonic system and increased its power and power. But the administrator knew that the demonic system could not absorb his system so quickly. It was necessary to retreat and gather with forces in order to repel the attacker and the aggressor who rebelled against him. Chen thought that he could finally celebrate the triumph. He believed that his long-term stay in the mission position has now changed the full dominance of the system and its elements. In his opinion, he can now do his fate regardless of anyone, and not fulfilling his will. The man's mind completely obeyed the demonic system, which became only stronger than his hatred. In the garden, she was mocking the guy who served. He could not understand what was happening and who dreamed of mocking him. Poor pulled the sword trying to find the culprit, but the girl was invisible. It was a Bao eunuch. He held the post of deputy emperor. The man became famous for his horrific affairs, regarding how he was bullied by the girls and engaged in extortion for enriching himself. Now the man thought about whether he was the victim of the ghost of one of those whom he tortured and mocked. But still who tried to take revenge, he will get rid of him and cut his sword. Su knew that this young man was cruel, and there are many crimes in his account. But after he voiced the number of his victims and the suffering he caused them, she became very sorry for the innocent souls of tortured. The agent was instilled into the body of the eunuch and decided to create various types of outrage on his behalf, which would undermine the system even more and brought even more chaos among the elements. Su has already seen in this entertainment. The emperor, meanwhile, had fun with his concubines. He thought that officials asked to cancel an order that was forbidden for girls to receive education and become civil servants in the palace. The emperor replied that he considers this order and law correct. Through education, girls began to think about completely unnecessary things, and their main task was to give birth to children and take care of a man at home. Lack of education is good for any girl or woman. After all, their place at home, near children and household chores. Every time a girl gives offspring, she raises her value among others. Chen took one of the girls for his chin and asked how she thought. The girl confirmed his words and said that he was completely right. The emperor was convinced that he would make every effort for the law. The thirst for the authorities and the desire to remain the only competitive male in general overshadowed the emperor's consciousness. He believed that he would become the only bride for all women and girls of the state and possessions. He was approached by a eunuch. He began to praise his ruler, speaking all sorts of compliments. Su thought that the administrator's act was thoughtless. Allow Chen to return at such a troubled time. There was a probability that the male system agent was back. The despot received complete freedom of action in order to complete the case of his mentor. He gave the dirty work to his character. Chen grabbed the girl by his throat and lifted above the ground. He asked why the concubine wanted to paint the nails, because before that it was not observed. The girl tried to explain what she just wanted. Her words walked past the ears of the ruler. He clenched his hand firmly, the neck cracked, and the body of a poor dead girl threw afar away, so that she was around the advisor himself. The Su believed that the owner of the crazy. The girls froze. They were shocked by how the lord with their girlfriend came. They did not even realize that he now chose a feverish way that could be calculated by the women's system. Now he has chosen the most suitable strategy, in his opinion. The emperor decided to destroy all girls and women who were considered suspicious. The same victims will be many innocent girls who will be suspected. Su felt that Chen had returned to the body of the emperor, but now she also felt that his character had changed very much. The system itself may have failed, or the administrator praised. Meanwhile, Zhang Mo himself was looking for traces of a woman's agent. After all, he is unlikely to cope with the demon system. Chen was the one who came to this virus. After all, he sued, and he was preparing a blow from the back. The administrator decides to instill in the body of a woman. He needs to act under a cover and get closer to the ruler. But suddenly he remembers that he was the manager of the palace, so he should think about his person. The young man was already bent over the eunuch's body when he suddenly put his finger to the agent's face and said that the body was already occupied. The administrator realized that Su so used the body of this man. But for what? It is not known. The eunuch lit a candle and spoke with Zhang about what happened between him and the emperor. Although Su guessed it, she wanted to find out from the administrator himself, but he did not want to talk. The girl only emphasized that if the boy does not find the body on a permanent basis, then soon his energy will end, and he will just die. His mistake can only be corrected by Zhang Mo, the administrator. The young man decided to be responsible. He told everything about what happened. The girl could not believe that he made such a mistake. Zhang Moon became awkward. He understood his miss in that. But he appealed to the fact that he first met the agent of the female system, who chose not the body of the young beauty of the concubine, but the eunuch who was a freak and mocked people, bringing a lot of grief and death. The boy also replied that his plan was to take possession of the assistant's body and then let him go with the enemy. However, now this plan was broken by the girl. He will just wait for her victories. The SU responded that this would never happen. She will not allow him to lose all the weight of the mission on her. The girl reminded that because of his miss, her mission became much more difficult and added unnecessary hassle of the women's system. The girl also told that Chen became the owner of 2 systems, and getting to him alone is very difficult. The man became very suspicious, which gave rise to extraordinary cruelty to the subjects. The same assistant eunuch will not handle it, but when they combine their efforts, they will be able to cope with the demonic system and conquer Sina again, and then they will get rid of him forever. On the threshold was a Fee, his longtime girlfriend. The woman did not know that she should now become a new body for the administrator. The merger due to lack of energy did not completely happen, but Jan was not going to provoke the emperor. So, in the meantime, she explained that this woman was a true companion Bao in his evil actions and actions. She knew all his secrets and secret thoughts, and they often were together at receptions and called evenings in the palace. Many also said that they were actually lovers who did not know how it was possible. Jiang Mo was surprised. In their male system, it was much easier. Both surprised that they chose the characters of the opposite sex, but for the sake of success, it was worth trying. None of them liked to be in this condition in the palace, risking life. It was also necessary to resolve the final issue of physical contact. After all, when Chen sees something that will look strange, he will definitely suspect something. The same closeness should be real and honest. SU said that there is one question. Jiang Mo does not understand at all how the girl behaves. In addition, a girl who once was one of the best imperial courtyards and now sleeps with an assistant. Bao examined his assistant carefully. He did not find any bad sign in the girl's body. It was easier to teach manners. The very beauty of the assistant will be a good protection against the emperor. Suddenly people heard. The servants went to visit their master. They knew that he could be angry but had to visit him. They both looked into the room to make sure. The servant saw that Mr. Bao was sitting with his assistant. The latter was quite ambiguous. The men realized that they had made a serious mistake. The owner drove them both, shouting. The eunuch said that the assistant could get out of him, but she was not going to do it. Jiang said he could not do it because he has drawn his back very sharply and he cannot move at all. The next day, Jiang lay on a chair in the garden and rested. The assistant to the emperor spoke to him. SU said that it is not necessary to put things in such a way because of simple back pain. The more they do, the stronger Chen. The girl took Bao for her head and asked why he was so boring because Su was so young. It is worth resting and taking from life as much as possible. In addition, their characters were now in a good position. Their quarrel could be heavier, but the girl decided that she would be wiser. For some reason, it seemed to her that there was something that had not been between the agents of 2 different systems between them. Finally, the eunuch said that it was worth doing everything in the power of Jiang Mo, that he would fall to the ceremony in the palace of the emperor. It is necessary to stop that maniac and its demonic system of gracia and terror as soon as possible. For some reason, the administrator really thought about it. He felt tired for a long time, and now an unknown surfactant has returned to him. The plan began to emerge in his head. It is worth a hurry. The emperor was preparing to hold a ceremony that had to change a lot of lives of his subjects. The very preparation itself was worth a lot of people, on whom they put heavy taxes on celebration. One of the families of the aristocrats took advantage of dissatisfaction and decided to raise the uprising against the emperor. He was able to easily suppress him, after which bloody massacre with all participants of the rebellion began. It's time to hold a ceremony. The emperor went to the Tianshan temple for toll to take place there. The most nearby members of his palace and the whole, which he trusted, arrived with him. Bao approached Palanquin where the lord traveled. He opened the screen and asked if his highness called the assistant. He replied that the courage of the eunuch was definitely enough if he behaves. The eunuch fell on his knees and asked for forgiveness. But Chen understood that the mentor wanted to take revenge on him. The same assistant body was the only possible option to sneak closer and beveraged with a center and a system. To be sure, the emperor decided to check the assistant using a demon system, but the demonic essence found nothing suspicious in the body of a man. The same could be relaxed. Along with Bao, his assistant fell. She said she was asking her lover to forgive her and personally. After all, they love each other, although the rules are forbidden. The same emperor can kill them together. The ruler was impressed with such loyalty, but he advised to take more detail to choose his husband. Chen hinted that the eunuch did not fit her, and she could actually become a mother of his children. But the girl replied that it was unworthy of this, because at the age of 14, during the war, her body was defiled by soldiers. It was such girls and women who did not like His Highness, which Su knew well. The emperor stood over the assistant. He noted that he now knew about the reasons for choosing a fee. A woman like an assistant is really worth nothing. She was unworthy to live with a normal man. Chen thought he had just spent time on this fool. After all, I just wanted to blame the eunuch for the object of another's spirit in his body. But now he was beautiful, but not worthy of his attention. The eunuch, along with the assistant, escaped. The man even made himself in his pants, which made it even clear that the man was not a mentor because he would not be able to do this in his pants. The agent and administrator in their new bodies were now sitting around the fire. The woman asked if he did not really drink. He did not understand what was talking about now. After all, in this case, she used a secret tool. The partner asked if the agent knew how much he risked his life when he climbed to the ruler's palanquin. Jiang Mo said he knew perfectly about the habits of his former ward, so not to panic. They were tested together, so they could not worry about how to sneak. The demonic system could not detect the approach, but it is not necessary to kill the emperor because the body was only a shell. Su asked if her teammate did not feel strange. After all, the assistant Jiang Mo did not overcome the demonic essence. When this happens, after the ceremony, the demon takes possession of the system. The girl said that while the man's system is alive, they have some time to correct his mistakes. It is necessary to restore the system and restore balance. But there was a problem in the form of a mediator. Su advised to calm down and said that they would take advantage of her assistant. The man was surprised that her assistant was a thick squirrel who did not give the impression of a serious agent. Su said that for such a service, Jiang could be a lot of money. After all, she was not going to just help the mail system, won the ground, and did not really realize that these two were now selling his life. The eunuch visited Nin's concubine, but she could not understand what the emperor's assistant at such a late hour wanted. He replied that he simply wanted to bring her thanks and a gift for further communication. Nin replied that she belonged to one of the richest families, and since childhood she received what she wanted. And now the girl was thinking about what a regular servant and a poor man could give her. To which the man replied that the material is not always as precious as they think. He is ready to share a very precious advice that will help the concubine in the future to become a companion of the emperor. The girl replied that otherwise she could not be, because her rivals are now dead, and she simply does not have other opponents. But the assistant advised to reassure his ambitions. He said Nin never understood His Highness. The man said that the greatest treasure for the emperor is the birth of his son, his heir. But in all these years, no one was able to do so. The same woman who will give him a son will become his only wife. One of His Highness is now in the 3rd place of pregnancy, but it was hidden from the general public. This visit the eunuch. He advised to think carefully about it. The Su realized that the concubine was the most obsessed with power and emperor. She will take effect right now to get rid of a pregnant competitor, and the conflict with Chen will be accurate. He was no longer wired. Nin's concubine was now going to dress well and visit the emperor himself. She must know how he treats her pregnant maid, and if the answer does not satisfy it, it will die. The girl lay on the floor. The cheek flashed a bruise. The emperor was very angry when he learned what his maid came to him. No one had the right to interfere in his affairs, to decide for him. The owner ordered the guard to pick up this girl and take her tent, which was forbidden to leave Nin until she realizes her miss. The concubine did not think that she would treat it. In the tent, the girl was served by Bao assistant. She asked at the concubine why she went to His Highness if she knew that he was angry with the fact of interference in his case. Nin ordered to call the eunuch. The girl was burning with the desire to revenge. She rightly believed that His Highness came to power only because of the benefit of the Nin family, and now he decided to contradict her and even beat her as a dog. The girl was thinking about revenge on the emperor, whose predecessor was also overthrown by her family. Jiang thought that the feeling of a man as if chess, they could easily be calculated. The day earlier, Jiang Mo and Su tried to go to the system through its assistant. The guy said Chen would notice an attempt to go to the system on the day of his ceremony. The same plan can fail. Jiang added that it will make it something right on the day of the ceremony, which is very distracting the enemy from the control of the system. The Nin family will raise the uprising, and the emperor will be forced to respond, directing all the attention. Both realized that the uprising of the family would not be superseded, but even the slightest sense to worry about it. It will simply be a tool to overthrow Sina and his demons. Su said goodbye to the partner and reported that she was going to visit his high bedtime at bedtime to take away suspicion. The trick noticed that his new master was surprisingly behaving. The emperor woke up in the middle of the night. He wiped his eyes and realized that he had a very bad head, which has not happened before. The demon system had to give him the perfect body, so the headaches were amazed. It could have been a testimony to an attempt to break his system, but it was not now that it is not. The young man heard a roar of combat drums. Someone wanted to rebel against his regime again, right before the ceremony. From the moment of his ascent to the throne, many of the families of the aristocrats dared to raise the uprising against him. Over time, it has even become a common thing for him and caused some sadness. Chen was surprised that after every unsuccessful uprising against him, new rebels again raised his head. The emperor did not understand why he was trying to rebel, because he considered himself equal to God. The eunuch watched the battle that turned in the valley. There was no emperor there, so it was not possible to crush him out of his tent. The plan could have failed. Su reassured and replied that they still had some time. But it was evident that Ziana could hide something from his partner. It was difficult to reveal his secret design, but it is necessary for the good of the system and balance in this world. The assistant had to intervene soon. The little thing attacked the housewife and closed her mouth and nose with a shaking moistened in a sleeping pill. He was unfortunately to do it, but he recently served as a new master and executed his disposal in the system. The assistant carried the body of her partner in his hands. She said that there was no other way out. The target had to understand this. Otherwise, the faithful assistant did not dare to oppose the girl he spent many years. Nin came to the battlefield with its warriors. She ordered the emperor to appear from her tent. He will definitely not have a pardon because earlier it was necessary to think about the apology and honor of the ruler. The girl's brother was traveling near Palankin. He promised that together with his father, he would now go down to the tent of his highness and brought the pagan on the rope and to throw him at the feet of a sister whose honor was hammered to resist. The ruler, meanwhile, lay in his tent. He felt and behaved as if nothing was threatened. For some reason, this behavior was alarmed by Nin, who watched it closely. The fear moved into her heart. The brother of the concubine was on a horse. He did not feel anxiety because of some incomprehensible reflections on fate. The young man was a warrior, so now he just wanted to punish the arrogant ruler for mockery of his daughter of the family. The emperor played a saucer in front of him. He felt offended and betrayed. But all his hopes were that the demonic system personally dealt with him. Personally, Chen felt fear of events. Brother's head Nin flew. She punched through the cup, launched by his imperial majesty. Chen intended to show the Nin family what a real despair was. Their troops saw the death of their boss. The concubine was afraid. His Highness approached the girl. Only the bodies of people and a bunch of broken spears remained behind him. Blood flowed by the river, covering the road to the emperor who enjoyed chaos. Nin realized that it was not a man before her. She believed that a real demon was inserted into the body of a man. But Chen grabbed her hair and head and struck her with force on the ground, trying to kill the girl. He beat her on the ground once after, but the girl rose. The emperor compared the survivability of women with cockroaches and advised to breathe much faster, not to take his time. He added that the murder gave him joy. The demonic essence indicated its slave that it is worth doing more important things now. The man suspected that the mentor and the agent were at the same time and prepared to follow them, but did not have time. The girl's assistant came first. Chen realized that his former mentor was now in her body. He said Chen has turned into a true abomination that disgust, and the world should get rid of it. His Highness was highly buried in the air and said that the mentor was forced to spend life in the body of a woman of low origin and dubious reputation. But Chen will now save him from such a shameful burden. Su was in the wagon, which was commanded by her former assistant. The girl demanded an explanation from him. He told that he was forced to shameful act by Jiang Mo, saying that this way would not threaten anything. The clash between Jiang Mo and it was not a pupil. The emperor struck the girl in the chest. The blood flew out of the wound. Chen said that he considered him a weak from the outset. His theory was confirmed when a man associated his fate with the agent of the female system that does not seem a real man, but Jiang replied that to come up with an extra disease is a real illness, and it is necessary to be treated. The emperor held the girl firmly for his chin. He asked if he would not become almighty when the third system was completely absorbed. In this way, he will be able to go beyond the existing being and get boundless power. The administrator promised to pray for Chen after his death. The emperor killed his mentor. This is why the SU will receive control of the system and will be able to overcome the enemy with the help of his assistant. Zhang mentioned that he became an administrator not because of the desire of power or ambition. He just liked to be lazy and watch movies with his favorite actor. Over time, he became one of the characters of such a movie. Everything that happened in the world of the emperor's system now, the boy considered it like the story of his favorite movie. He could predict, but the finale remained closed for it. Death could be the finale. The SU, meanwhile, received complete control over the emperor system and promised the demon to deal with him finally and destroy him from the face of the earth. She received the most advanced equipment. But the rage and hatred that overwhelmed Chen made themselves known. The demonic energy just raged around it. He promised that he didn't lose exactly this time. He collected a lot of suffering and tears for himself. SU attacked the first. She promised to deal with him. After all, the lower system had to stay so. Her strength and pressure were too powerful to the enemy who did not learn to manage her own. The demon suffered and tried to leave its carrier, but during the time they spent together, they just grew up. His body had to be invulnerable, but now he had a completely different look, beaten. The girl reported that he probably confused who would really be God and whose side is victory and justice. The lower demonic system must be deleted, the command for which it gave the SU after victory. The emperor lay on the earth. He tried to crawl, and the last forces left him after removing the demon system. The man did not want to die. He suggested the agreement, but SU was not going to spare it. She set his foot on Chen's back and asked how to feel a defeated woman after he had suppressed them all his life and tried to humiliate them in every possible way. Chen realized that he had come to an end. The sword struck him through. The spirit came out of the body of the former lord and ruler of the world in a few seconds. The system congratulated the agent with a successful mission and the passage of all victims' testing points. The assistant only regretted that Jiang Mo died, but the girl explained that after the death of the body in this space, the soul returns to the main space, where she quietly continues to live in the body of the owner. The girl replied that she suffered with the help of a special code, Jiang's soul to the body of the eunuch. The assistant advice of such ingenuity of the girl. It is time to say goodbye to the young man and return to the main world. Zesyu realized that Jiang was doing everything all this time to protect her from danger. He understood that he did not do well, making a mistake in the system. Now he thought about his mission and money for her, which he would not see. He asked the girl if she would not take him to her system, or though he would not treat lunch. But she replied that she did not burn such desire. But the assistant decided that the girl would remain a little more with Jiang Mo. One, or a bamboo mouse, reported that nothing is personal, he simply became infected with a lazy from his former partner.